Your tutelage has come to an end. You're ready
For what?
to move from the theoretical to the practical. You and I, we are the only ones we can trust. That's your final lesson.
Hello and welcome back to A Stark Contrast, where we discuss the differences and similarities from Marvel Comics to their MCU counterparts. And we are your hosts, Geoffrey
and Dai.
Hello, and welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back.
Yes.
First real episode of the year.
Yes, our first character study of the year. Yeah.
Right. So if you hadn't tuned in yet, we did we started 2024 with our mini Marvel number 12, which we did on camera.
Check that out.
Check that out,
please,
on YouTube if you would be so kind, and stream the episode as well where you get your podcasts. But speaking of mini Marvel 12, you remember how you mentioned the Ryan Reynolds caption on the photo that he was like prisoner?
Yeah.
So we actually got one of our supporters on Patreon, Nats, actually clarified that whole thing, which we could have easily done ourselves, but it was pretty cool to actually get this chime in. And so Nats wrote the thing with the Ryan Reynolds photo. She says, I think that it's 24601. And that's the prison number of Jean Valjean and Les Mis. So do you know what
that's
Les
funny.
Mis? You know Les Mis, right?
Yeah,
so Les Miserables. And that's the role that Hugh Jackman played. Not sure what the joke was, though. That is basically the joke, is that he's a musical buff and he was in that musical. And so Ryan's like, prisoner 24601. And that's funny. Yeah. So that makes total sense.
That's a nice little cheeky callback.
It's cute. Yeah. And I totally forgot that he did that. And he was in, I believe, the theatrical version of the musical. So yeah, that's kind of awesome. Thanks for that,
Mary
Nats.
Jane.
Yeah, that's very true.
I'm sorry, Michelle Jones.
So that's what that whole thing was about. It's like a Hugh Jackman deep cut, which I appreciate. But it was fun to record again on video. It took a lot of work. I mean,
it was
but
it's definitely a different mindset of being like, okay, we're on camera.
For sure. Yeah. So we'll see what we do moving forward. But thanks to everybody who tuned in. Speaking of Ryan Reynolds, Deadpool 3 has officially finished shooting. So the film is slated to release on July 26th of this year. So the countdown is on. What would you say to that, Jeff? That is literally less than 7 months away. Is that insane for production?
Well, I mean, we obviously know that production had to be stopped.
Yeah.
We obviously only know. I mean, I've seen it. I've seen some of this, the set leaks.
Yeah.
So those ones were shot on a physical set.
Yeah.
So there's probably other parts of the movie that were being shot on in a studio that we don't know about, obviously.
Yeah.
But 7 months.
Yeah, to do all the
post stuff.
And,
I don't think that's not uncommon. I think.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little bit accelerated because of the strikes.
Yeah.
But 7 months, I would assume that's a solid amount of time. I don't know how much time that would also be for VFX, because VFX should be getting a lot of time.
They were probably the moment they film something, immediately.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes.
Yeah.
That's usually how it goes. As soon as a day of filming is done, you get those dailies in either at the end, towards the end, after that's wrapped, or the morning after, and then that next day, while another day of shooting is happening, an assistant editor is touching the previous day's dailies and creating that story.
Especially because with Deadpool in particular, his mask is animated, so it's got all these subtle little eye widening, the brow lifts and such. So
I'm saying whatever you can get to the VFX artist as early as possible, that's like your best
It's
bet.
so wild. Yeah. So that's going to be exciting. So we'll have the film in literally 7 months time.
Crazy.
So wild. It's going to be great. But of course, while Deadpool is done, the marketing for Madame Web is really heating up.
It is.
So they're dropping like high quality pictures of the characters now, which is just funny. I literally put LOL in my notes. But yeah, so that movie will be here before we know it. Less than a month to go until that drops. Should be interesting. But what I really wanted to talk about before the show here is that Daredevil Born Again has officially begun or picked up shooting again. So they're officially back in production from their long hiatus on due to the strikes. And that just started earlier this week. And so a lot of news is dropping as far as that's concerned as well, because fans were wondering like who else, now that they've more or less confirmed that the Netflix shows are quote unquote canon.
Yeah.
Are any of these characters coming back? And so word is that yes, Deborah Ann Wall, Eldon Henson, and Wilson Bethel are all reportedly returning as Karen Page, Foggy Nelson, and Bullseye respectively.
Woo!
And Bullseye was the one I forgot that I wanted the most, that I didn't even realize. Oh, like of course they could bring Bullseye up. Did you make it that far, season 3?
Ooh, not in depth. I probably dabbled a little bit, but like nothing that, not in depth to where I remember it off the top of the head.
But you remember Colin Farrell.
Yeah, of course.
Bullseye.
Okay.
His Bullseye, I mean, they were both good in their own right, but like Wilson Bethel really brings...
I've heard.
He's great.
Yeah.
So if and when you go back to actually get into that season, he absolutely kills it. Like, no pun intended. And he's fantastic. Like, he's truly fantastic. So that's really, really exciting because, the news about Wilson just hit, I think it was yesterday or today.
Yeah.
We're recording on a Wednesday, so that's fresh off the boat. Love that news. And of course, John Bernthal is coming back as Frank Castle. So I'm just like, all right, Jessica Jones, any day now. At this rate, they just might as well be like, gang's all back. Like,
yeah, just keep it all grounded too. It's just like, all right, here we go.
Yeah. They don't have to do any big celebratory like welcome back. Just give them a little confirm, and then that's it. We're good.
Yeah.
And so before we start up, just a last reminder that The Marvels is available on digital and will be streaming on Disney Plus February 7th. So if you have not seen the film yet and you don't want to buy it, it will be available in about a week and a half. So enjoy it. I'm seeing all those people that were once shunning it now being like, oh, why did I wait so long to watch it? I wish I saw it in theaters. Like, nah, really?
Dude, it's really good. I can't wait for it.
It's so wild. So excited to watch that again. But as we proceed into our first character study of the year, just a reminder that we are not experts and we don't claim to be. We're just a couple of nerds nerding out. And in this episode, we are going to nerd out all over Maya Lopez.
Woo!
Echo.
Yeah.
So, created by David Mack and Joe Quesada. This is like one of those modern age dream teams of sorts. Really big names. Joe Quesada, of course, was the famed Joe Q, who was editor-in-chief of Marvel for a very long time. Mm-hmm. David Mack has been long instilled in the Marvel universe himself. He's known for his very layered artworks. Mm-hmm. I'll show you some as we go along, but David Mack actually took the helm of writing a lot of this era of Daredevil that we're actually going to talk about today, specifically Echo. But first, I don't know if you scrolled down, Jeff, but do you want to give an approximation guess of when you think Echo was created?
Oh, when? Oh, I didn't see it. I scrolled right past it, so it was all blurry.
Yeah.
When Echo was created?
Yeah.
I feel like she's a newer character. Oh, gosh. There's too many decades. I'm just going to go with a decade.
Okay.
Is that too? No. 2000s?
So close. Because I'm sure it's what's calling back to you is like, for instance, our good friend Jessica Jones, as we were just talking about, she was created in 2001, for instance.
Yeah.
Right. So this is like a new age sort of turn of the century, if you will, creation of characters that came about. And Echo predates Jessica Jones.
Oh, 90s?
90s. But the very end of it, 1999.
Oh, okay.
So Echo's first appearance was Daredevil #9, cover dated December 1999. Quite literally before 2000. Okay. Yeah. And so this was volume 2 of Daredevil of that era. And so, yeah, super she's been in the game for a minute. Like this will be her 25th year.
Oh yeah,
which is actually kind of insane to think
crazy,
about.
Yeah.
And again, she predates some of the characters we have come to know and love. You know, Kamala Khan, like Carol Danvers as Captain Marvel. Like all of these characters, at least in some versions, have not come until after Echo. And so it's interesting with that, because I did notice that a lot of a dialogue that, you know, some of the lesser than male fans that had some things to say about this character at all getting focus was like, oh, you know, woke and broke type thing. And it's like, my dude, she's been around since 1999. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
You know, it's very interesting. And so anyway, yeah, she arrived in Daredevil #9. And I did some research as far as the price goes. Not going to make you guess, because that's 1999 is kind of weird. It was probably $325.
$325?
Yeah,
I was going to say like $170 or something.
Well, that would have been generous. I would say at the closest maybe $225, $250.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, it's definitely around there. We're not talking like 25 cents anymore. but yeah, it was still in a sweet spot where comics, like deluxe versions with glossy paper, would cost a little bit more, but for the most part they were all under $3.99. But if you wanted to get this book graded, for instance, Shortbox has a CGC 9.8 for $499. Not too bad, especially considering it's 25 years old. There's a signed version. There's a version signed by David Mack for about $900. And then there's one that's signed and sketched by David Mack for $680. So I'm not sure how that worked out. Maybe the grades were all the same. So someone just wants to get more bang for their buck. And then on eBay, you can get a 9.8 graded for $950, almost twice as much on Shortbox. So again, the eBay folks are just like, cha-ching. And then similarly, a signed and sketch version on eBay is $1,500. So
oh my gosh,
it's quite literally double the price. So if people don't know any better and they're feeling the hype of like, I gotta buy something, they don't know Shortbox, oof, they're getting completely jacked. And then on the other side of the spectrum, the great thing about this book only being 25 years old is that the quality that you can find is relatively great across the board. You're not going to get a 0.5 or 1.5 anywhere. Like all the books are either going to be raw or 9.0 and higher. So you can shop around and get a pretty good quality. The lowest that I found on Shortbox was a 9.0 and you can get that for $100. So if you wanted to lock in a good investment, especially with Echo, boom, $100, you could get a 9.0. On eBay, there was a 7.5 floating around for $89. Not too bad. And then if you just wanted to own the book, you could probably get it for about $50 to $65. So if you like this character, great deal. Good to go. So, I mean, this is a no-brainer. Is the show, or is Hawkeye your first exposure to Echo?
Hawkeye, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That's wild. Yeah, it was interesting because, you know, I knew of Echo from Daredevil as well, the comic books, but she's not exactly a character that I would have imagined they would introduce her into the MCU before so many other characters at all.
Got it.
You know, not that she's a sub character or anything. It's just that, oh, that's an interesting choice type of deal. It's kind of awesome to think about that. They took the route that they did, and we'll examine this a little more as we go along. But in the interim, I do have a description from a trading card I'm not sure which set this is. I think it's like 2006 or so. This is going to be interesting for you because there are quite a few differences.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So Echo, real name Maya Lopez, first appearance Daredevil, number 9, 1999. Powers and abilities. Maya can duplicate any physical action that she sees, ranging from musical performance and ballet to martial arts and weapon use. Maya is an Olympic-level athlete. Because of her superhuman powers, she is a highly talented pianist, music composer, artist, ballet dancer, boxer, martial artist, and markswoman. Maya is deaf, and her reliance on visual cues renders her vulnerable in the dark.
Huh? She's basically, that first couple sentences was basically, she's a taskmaster?
Yeah. Ding, ding, ding. When you look Maya up, traditional Maya, comic book Maya, on Google, whatever have you, it'll always say Taskmaster. They liken her to Taskmaster almost immediately. And that's how she is in comics. Her powers are quite literally that. She can replicate anything. So, Jeff's like mind blown. Yeah, it's very, very interesting. And so for people who are familiar with Echo and the character that she is, to have been introduced to her the way that we were in Hawkeye, it was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then they kind of piled it on, and then that's why in the series itself, it I don't want to say it greatly deviates, but it is quite different in some aspects. Overall, it does build on top of an existing sort of lore and just explains more things that was missing.
Yeah.
But that is the biggest stark contrast when the character comes to mind. Because she does not have that in the show.
Any part of the show.
No,
whether it's Hawkeye or her show.
Yeah, like she's Olympic and she's athletic and a boxer.
Yeah, like
even
in Hawkeye, like when it came to like powers, I was like, oh, like Echo.
Yeah.
Like she's just deaf, but she's a brute because she just kicks butt. So I'm like, that's fine. Like you don't need like super human powers to like be considered a hero.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. And then when we talk about it later in the show, when we get to the show, I'll be like, oh, okay. Like she's this now. I was like, okay. So we'll get into it towards the later part of the show, but it is crazy, but still nothing compared to her comic powers,
nothing,
quote unquote.
It's very different. And even when it comes to the name aspect of it, they do touch on various versions and meanings of what the word Echo means. But that is essentially, from the get-go in the comics, that's kind of the starting point of why she is named Echo. But they actually don't really harp on that version too much. But let's start at the beginning. So from the get-go, the general characteristics are spot on. Maya is introduced, like, to the version that we do see on screen. She's introduced as a deaf daughter of William Lopez, a member of Kingpin's large crime network. I was thinking of Kingpin's Kingdom for some reason.
That's fair.
Which it is. And then in the comics, however, her family are of the Cheyenne Nation, indigenous peoples of the Great Plains, whereas in the show, she's introduced as Choctaw.
Choctaw, yes.
Choctaw. And so we'll get into that in a bit, but like we just said, one of the major differences in the comic and the cinematic versions is not only her powers, but that historically, the tribe that they've pulled her from is a different tribe. And so Sidney Freeland, who directed the series, she shared that Native American tribes have pretty much like throughout film and television and pop culture as a whole, they've all kind of just been mashed together, right? And that's where the whole Indians comes from. Like they just call them Indians. It's like, well, no, there's different tribes. Exactly right. And so not only are they Native Americans, but they're indigenous peoples. And so when Sidney Freeland took on this whole task of, okay, how is she going to tell the story of an indigenous tribe and specifically this one superhero and not just lump her in as, like a traditional Indian, if you will.
Yeah.
She wanted to give her more body, a body of story and background. And so she changed Echo's background from Cheyenne to Choctaw. And then she was quoted saying, we leaned into the specificity of her being from one tribe only to give her a fresh start. And given we had Choctaw writers in the writer's room, that meant she became Choctaw instead of Blackfeet or Cheyenne. So they just really wanted to really get to the nitty-gritty details of a certain tribe rather than just generalize her.
Yeah.
Which is totally fair. And I think it's great. It's a great, especially because they are people who understand it's not just like a bunch of people who are not of that background writing things that they think are cool, or they've learned over time. It's great. The authenticity is there. And so in the books, they don't really, I feel like they didn't harp on too hard about her being of the Cheyenne people, but they do generalize a lot. They were a little guilty of kind of using like teepees and shaman,
sure,
on a very small, like, let's just tell the story and then move on. But they did her a great service in the series by building on top of that. So that's kind of what I meant when I said earlier. And so beyond her heritage, although Maya was born deaf, she was born with an innate ability to pick up attributes and skills. And so this is the biggest difference. So from birth, she was deaf. And as she started to grow, the one thing I hated about this origin story is that they liberally used the R word. So she was regarded as retarded throughout many of the origin stories. And so she'll in the comic, she'll recollect that as a kid, even Kingpin says it. Like she's called the retarded girl, which is like, oh my goodness, this would never fly. Yeah, it would never fly. But of course they course correct themselves in the book, and they say it's because she is deaf, and it's just a simple thing of that people weren't as open to understanding that about her. And so like the show, she does kind of grow into herself a bit, and people understand her, whereas other people just continue to ridicule her for her disability. But in the comics, it's soon found out that she's got this eidetic memory where she can just see something and then immediately she knows how to do it.
Wow.
So it allows her to mimic anything. There's this really beautiful portion of her origin where she realizes, like, she watches a pianist as a baby. Like her class went to go see somebody perform. Yeah. And the pianist is playing, and she walks up. She's like, I don't know, 4 or 5. Walks up to the piano itself and like almost like puts her hands on the piano to feel the vibrations. And you can see the thought bubble. The way they depict the teacher is like, it's like the monster from Monsters Inc. that has like the glasses and she's like a worm or something. It almost looks exactly like that. And she's like, you could see like she's speaking, and she's like, Maya, get away from there. And young Maya is just beautifully drawn and just like has her eyes closed, and she has her hands on the piano. And then no sooner does the pianist finish, Maya gets up on the chair and
does the exact same thing.
She does the exact same thing, front, beginning to end. And so they realize, oh, she's not our word. She's actually a savant. And so the skills like allowed her not only to pick up talents like dance and music, but then as she grew, she could also learned how to read lips. So
interesting.
Yeah, because there's the way that they depict her deafness in the comics isn't very depicted at all. She has speech bubbles like everybody else.
Yeah.
So what they've essentially said is that through her ability, her eidetic memory, she learned how to read lips and therefore learned how to speak. And so I tried to really find, like, did anybody super duper clarify what she might sound like, but I didn't find anything. And so she doesn't do the signing thing. She doesn't, I mean, she has in more modern books, especially now, and in some of the later tail end of of when she was recurring as a character.
Yeah.
But they don't do any of the sign language stuff. It's just straight up speech bubbles. And I was like, wait, is she deaf in this part? And I had to like really think about it. I was like, wait. But yeah. And so she's using her deaf voice to speak out loud in the comic books, especially in her first origins. And so yeah, it's a very interesting take in how they showed that expressiveness. And so the story is very familiar the more you get along. Like William, there's no tracksuit mafia involved in this version of the story.
Oh, okay.
That was actually a pretty genius, like convenient way to tie it all together in Hawkeye on the show. But in the comics, William is essentially, he's given the nickname Crazy Horse, which is like, it says a lot about him. And also it's a callback to the legendary Crazy Horse of Native American history. And so William he basically derails in his position in Fisk's empire. And he's basically a liability. So what does Wilson Fisk do with liabilities?
Kill them.
He kills them. So Fisk himself pulled the trigger, and William, as he's like pleading for his life, he's like, I can fix this. And Fisk is like, oh,
nah.
No. And so he barters with him with his last breath. He's like, just take care of my daughter. And he's like, he uses the R word. He's like the retarded one. And it's like, oh my God, these guys that like David Mack, what were you doing, man? I get it, but also, oof. And so he goes, yes, Maya, just please take care of Maya. And he's like, I promise. And then he shoots him and he kills him dead.
My goodness.
But Maya doesn't see any of this. And it's like kind of like the show, if you remember it. He places his hand on Maya's cheek as he's dying, and then there's a blood print of his hand on her face, and it's really cool because like in the comics, how did she describe it? Oh, it's a recurring line in the comics, and it goes, he puts his hand on my face, then it falls lifeless, and he leaves me with only an echo. So she
roll credits.
Yeah, exactly. And she constantly thinks of this when she's recollecting her childhood because she's left with an echo of her father. That's all she has left of him. So again, they're picking up all these different versions of what does echo mean? It's more than just her mimicking. It's the fact that that's all she has and hears, quote unquote, of her father is just an echo of him. So Fisk, he does keep his word and he raises Maya, but to be the competent partner that William could not be.
Yeah.
And so he leans into the artistic, skills that she clearly has. He makes sure she goes to the best schools, not unlike what we're seeing on screen. And so the thing with, we have not seen yet, and this is where things could get dicey moving forward from the series, is that in the books, as convenient it is for Fisk, he concocts this like perfect storm by telling Maya, because again, she didn't know how her dad died.
Yeah.
She just know that somebody shot him. And so Fisk is like, Maya,
do you want to know who killed your father?
Exactly. And so what he had essentially done was set up Daredevil to find this secret safe that Fisk had at one of his safe houses or whatever. And he took surveillance photos of Daredevil getting this money out, this gun out. He takes those photos. He's like, you want to see who killed your father? And he serves her the pictures. And he's like, that gun that he's holding, it's her father's gun. It was like trademarked her father. It's a gold gun. Like it's very.
Oh yeah.
So he concocts this and imagines this entire story and you have to imagine like it was 20 years ago. Like her dad died 20 years ago when she was a child in the comics.
Yeah.
And so Daredevil must be in his 40s or something.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it really like kind of dates the character a bit, but given Fisk's age as well, it tracks. But yeah, so she is then led to believe, oh, Daredevil killed my father, I have to go kill Daredevil. And that's essentially what gets her to be his his like little lackey, you know, like she's got a purpose now.
Yeah.
And with Uncle Wilson's, you know, guidance, she can go get the man who killed her father. And so in the comics, she comes to know the truth over about 5 issues after he makes up the story. And then, not unlike the show, she ultimately shoots him in the face. But instead of just the one eye, he loses both eyes.
Oh, funny.
It's so crazy.
Ironic.
Like the last picture of the comic, he's like, yes. He's got 2 patches all over his eyes.
He's like, Maya!
Yeah, and so that's what happens in the comics, at least when it comes to her origins. And so we'll jump over to MCU land. And so Maya Lopez, of course, portrayed by the amazing Alaqua Cox.
Woo!
And by Darnell Bissau as a child. And of course, Darnell is Alaqua's cousin.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah, and so that's why they look so similar. First seen in 2021's Hawkeye. Can you believe Hawkeye?
3 years ago.
3 years ago? Holy smokes.
I fell in love with Haley Steinfeld 3 years ago. That's crazy.
Only 3 years ago?
Well, that's when it like deepened.
Okay. Well, yeah, she's
Deepened.
gorgeous. Last seen in this year's Echo series with episodes directed by Sidney Freeland and Catriona McKenzie. And then I wanted to also add featuring music by Dave Porter and a shout out to the featured stunt double for Maya, Caitlin Deschelle. So again, if we backtrack to Hawkeye, the entire function was introduced with the tracksuit mafia.
Yeah.
The bros.
Yes.
Which is marvelous because we've covered the tracksuit mafia in our Hawkeye episodes, and they were very much a very separate group of people. They didn't have anything, or at least not much, to do with Kingpin, let alone Maya, but they really pulled them together very marvelously. And so as far as Maya's part in Hawkeye, she encountered Ronin in the flashback, and then Ronin, quote unquote, killed her father and the gang, and she swore revenge. Then she finds the Hawkeyes, tries to get the Hawkeyes, and then she confronts Kazi, who is portrayed by Frafri, and then
that show is just filled with a bunch of lies.
Yeah, the entire thing.
Every action is based off of lies.
Yeah, every single one. It's so wild, right? And yet it was so comical in its own way. But yeah,
violence and lies.
Which
now you think about it, that's pretty much every comic
Street
book.
level.
It's pretty much every comic book known to man. So yeah.
Yeah, and so like all the manipulation that goes on between these characters is so wild. And so yeah, when she confronts Kazi and then he tells her, like, did he tell her that it was Fisk? He did, right?
I think so. I feel she discovered somehow, but she was like guided.
Yeah.
No. Clint told her.
Clint, oh duh.
Yeah, because like they fought in like that junkyard.
Yeah.
And then he's signing with her.
Yeah.
He's like, we had like you're fighting the wrong person.
Yeah. Because he's like, he's like, ask your boss. Your boss is the one that put the hit on your dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And which essentially leads her to Kazi.
Yeah.
Who then of course is like, well, it's Kingpin. Yeah. And so I'll just say right now, I did not include Kazi in anything beyond this point because like again, like they kind of had like, you could feel there was sort of like a romantic thing going on between them, but nothing was really acted upon. He was just very much her sort of confidant.
Yeah.
As far as that all goes. But again, he was also manipulating her for Kingpin, so meh. But yeah, so it's not long after that she not only kills Kazi, but also goes after Wilson Fisk. And then, yeah, the whole shooting of the face and how everybody was like, is he dead? But it's like,
and it's like, well,
no.
Did you see him die on screen?
There's no proof of the pudding.
I still don't know what Wilson Fisk's superpower is and why he's so invincible.
He's just a big dude.
I know, that's why. I'm like, he's just a big dude, but I'm like, he doesn't have any.
Dude.
It's not like he's Thanos or something or an alien. He's a human being from New York.
That's what's so awesome about him.
But I'm also like, that's also like the fantasy of and like why it's like so fantastic. It's like it's taking place in the real world, which you believe.
Yeah.
But you're also like, wait, this is a superhero world, and you're like, But yeah, he didn't die. That's a big guy.
Yeah. And you can't help but wonder, like, what did he do? Did she kind of like flinch? Like, there are so many scenarios in which, like, what's the margin of error?
Yeah, and I know it was a superhero like world when I saw Wilson Fisk throw Kate Bishop that hard when they were fighting, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know if I believe this, and I was like, oh, you know what? I don't need to believe that. Like, this is
tossing her around.
Yeah,
like
I
a
was
piece
like,
of
yeah,
paper.
I was like, yeah, he's strong. That guy,
strong.
He's at least like 6'7".
Well, the one that really kills me is when he just straight up rips the car door off.
Yeah, that's when I was like, really?
Yeah.
But then I was like, who cares? I was like,
I mean, like, that's why I kind of do love that he was kind of buffered, right? Like, because he came through in Daredevil, and then he just disappears for a long time. But then we get introduced to the Into the Spider-Verse version where he's gigantic.
A humongous specimen of a person.
He's literally 15
and I was like,
feet tall.
Whatever. Like,
he's got like a cubic circumference of like 429. You know, he's huge.
Yeah.
He's huge. And then we come back to this Hawkeye edition of Fisk, and he's kind of almost bigger than we remember.
Yeah.
He felt more padded, and it is because not to stray too far off the course here, but the fact that Vincent D'Onofrio is a tall guy, but he's not big.
Yeah.
You know, and so the fact that he has to wear the body padding, and they do give him the gigantic white blazer, and then he's wearing this freaking Hawaiian shirt.
If I ever have the chance to meet Vincent D'Onofrio, I'm expecting to look all the way
He's
up.
tall. Yeah. He's tall.
I'm gonna be like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's got a presence about him. Let me tell you that much. But yeah, it's interesting because they do sort of they sort of emphasize his bigness. Like, I don't know what's another word of saying it.
Gargantuan.
He's just gargantuan of a man, but not necessarily fat. He's just big.
He's a big.
Yeah, and so it's reflected in his power. But yeah, so to think of like how he must have maneuvered to get shot, but not shot so precisely that it went through his brain and all that stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, but again, that's a story for another time. He's
so
a
funny.
Powerful man. But yeah, so once Maya believed that Fisk was out of the way, she was then enabled to destroy his operations. And so that leads us to the Echo series as it is. And of course, we'll talk about it throughout this episode. So for the moment, I wanted to dive into her powers and paraphernalia. So again, she possesses this photographic memory and photographic reflexes, essentially eidetic memory. And she's capable of perfectly duplicating any physical movement. So this is, I mean, there's just no other way to say it. She is practically Taskmaster. So if she sees Daredevil throw a baton, she can throw it exactly like Daredevil. Huh. If she sees him catapult off of a building, she can do it too. And all the way up through just, again, the speaking mannerisms. She can pick up anything. So she learns how words look if she just sees it once. And so she can really look at somebody and be like, oh, she knows what you're saying. And she can reply because her lips can mimic.
I would love that power.
It's kind of wild,
That's kind
right?
of a cool power.
It's pretty cool, yeah. And what's funny is that I believe Cindy Moon has a little bit of it as well. She has a bit of eidetic memory. So it's an interesting facet for a spider. You know what I mean? We'll hopefully cover Cindy Moon one day. But it's very interesting, and not many characters have that. Even the super spies, they don't have that. So Maya is in a very small pool of heroes or anti-heroes who fall in that category. But on the MCU side, so before I even get there, spoiler alert, if you have not watched all of Echo, it's only 5 episodes. What are you waiting for?
Watch it.
Watch it. In the show, so again, series director Sydney Freeland, she shared with Variety, actually, that she felt Maya's comic powers were, quote unquote, kind of lame. And so rather than Maya echoing others' abilities, she wanted to have her display a different power, echoing that of her ancestors. So we only get a glimpse of them in the series finale, especially. Like, each episode is great because, again, there are only 5, but you're introduced to each generation of the Choctaw family, at least when Maya is concerned. Or, sorry, Choctaw ancestors, because they're not technically like direct relatives. They're in the lineage, but they're not like one after another, immediately after another. And so, each episode is named after a different ancestor. So yeah, we only get the culmination of all those powers like in the last 5 minutes maybe of the show. Pretty
much the last quarter of it. Yeah.
The rest of it is really much like kind of she's stumbling into different facets of different ancestors, but it's just Maya being a total badass. Not even up until
literally the definition of the power of my ancestors.
Yeah, exactly right.
Flowing through me.
Yeah, exactly. And so we see her. She in the last episode, she's able to focus and channel the powers of her ancestors, but specifically using her mother's ability to heal, which she uses on Wilson Fisk. So it's kind of like,
right, yeah.
So that's the question now, is like thoughts on what she did to him. Like, what do you think she really did to him, and also how do you feel about
it? Reminds me of what happened in the Marvels, actually, when they went into the memories together.
Yeah,
the three of them.
Yeah.
So I'm like, is it something like that? Like that she has the power to unlock a certain part of someone's mind that's like that defines who they are and why they are the way they are.
That's interesting, because that's also what Professor X did for Wanda.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's like
interesting.
And it's like let me get inside your head, because what memory or what event makes you you.
Yeah.
And it's always that one specific moment. And for Fisk, it was seeing his being home with his mom and dad, and his dad always beating his mom and just being abusive and stuff. And he's like, all right, like, no more of this. And that's when he becomes like a violent person.
Yeah.
So
do you think she because they had that conversation, and do you think she helped him revisit it so that he could get past it? Do you think she absolved him of that?
I think she helped him. I think it was basically giving him like a third, what is it? Like a
third eye?
Not a third eye, but just like a third person view of that event being like, because when you experience it, you're kind of like this is what's happening. This is why I am the way I am. But when you see it from a third person's perspective, you're kind of like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like that's
when you're witnessing it from another.
When you're witnessing from it, and you're like, dang, that was me. And like, that's what I did when I like at that time.
Yeah.
And then when you come out of it, you're kind of like, what, did I really do that?
Yeah.
So now it gets you thinking of just like who you are and take a step back. So maybe it could be just that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be interesting because, like I immediately got the idea, the idea that she sort of, kind of awoken his sensibility about it, or relieved the anger in him in some way. And so, because he's like, it's kind of like when in Guardians 2, when Mantis touched Gamora, right? And she was like, you feel scared.
Yeah.
And so you never see Gamora cower, and nor do you see Wilson Fisk back down from anybody. So the fact that he's left like going, what did you do to me? And he's like literally like cowering away from her and almost like in shock of the things that must have been emotionally like coming over him.
I feel like he's never been in that situation before. That's why. Yeah. Because he's only dealt with like street level heroes. No one that's like intergalactic or someone with powers like that.
Sure.
So he was probably like, what just happened?
Yeah. Very true. Yeah. So we're kind of left with this open-endedness. And it'll be interesting to see the full depth of what she did to him. So for the meanwhile, we'll jump into aesthetic. And so you can see, Jeff, on our doc, It's actually quite spot on as far as her look goes. I mean, of course, in the comics, she's a bit more rugged, a bit more edgy, if you will. So in the comics, she's got her hair up. She's got the handprint on her face at all times, for the record. So that's a big difference between the two, is that you almost never see Maya without the handprint on her face. So it's not like a tattoo or anything, but it's a very tribal sort of ritualistic thing that she does.
Yeah.
Is to remind herself. And then she's got these bindings that are around her arms and on a thigh. And she's wearing the tube top,
little
tank
midriff.
top. Yeah, midriff. You see her abs, and she's got a belt and black jeans on. But that's very much, for the most part, her outfit in the comics. Sometimes she has like bird feathers in her hair, but other than that, that's pretty spot on. And then, of course, in the MCU, black leather, very cool. She's always had that, even in Hawkeye. And now with the Echo series, she does have that tribal circle just over her heart area. Which again is also pulled from the comics. So they did a pretty great job. And, of course, not unlike the Black Panther films, the proper representation and authenticity was crucial to the project. So the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, along with advisors from an organization called Illuminative, Native woman-led racial and social justice organization dedicated to challenging the narrative about Native peoples, were all consulted on the representation of the Choctaw culture, legends, and history portrayed in the series. So they were not messing around. They were like, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it correct and right and authentic. So yeah, it's pretty great that they've done this. And again, it's a very strong, very dedicated representation of the Choctaw people in pop culture, especially. Not only just Marvel, but like in the world, which is kind of insane. Like, this is 2024, but better late than never. And so along with the costume designer Amber Wrigley, various members of the series teams work directly with the Choctaw people to ensure the proper representation of the tribe. And so we not only do we see it in every single episode, we also see different eras.
Yes.
Which is really cool.
That was really cool.
Yeah, like, with you see the origins and also the what's the proper name? The light horseman, the sharpshooter. Like, you see that era. You see all these different versions of the same lineage of ancestry, and it's really cool. Down to the final suit that Maya has. That's crafted by her grandmother, which is really cool. And again, very authentic, nothing hokey. It felt good. It felt very real and done the way that I imagine it would be, right? Like, the fact that her grandma put the craft in to create something for her that her mother then sort of leads her back to, really pulls the whole series together too. So kudos to the entire team on that. And so we're going to dive into family, friends, and affiliations. So I mentioned to Jeff that this section is going to be interesting, if only because there's not much to say, which you'll be actually kind of mind blown about. But let's start out with William Dancing Horse Lincoln. So I said Lopez at the beginning of the show because on the show itself, his name is William Lopez. However, in the comics, his name is William Lincoln. And so there's a very interesting facet about this character, is that he's not quite as lovable or genuine as he is depicted on the show. And he even says in the comics, when he introduces himself, for instance, he'll be like, yeah, my name is William Lincoln, like the president on the money, like, because he's very money.
On the money?
Yeah, like he'll say like on the bill, because he's so like obsessed with like money and power.
Sure.
Yeah, and so originally he's known as Dancing Horse, and so he is of the Cheyenne Nation in the comics. And so it's later revealed that his dancing horse is then changed to Crazy Horse, and it's a Lakota nickname given to him by his friends. And again, it's a nod to the famed 19th century war leader of the same name, but not for the same reasons per se, but because he's crazy. And so, as we mentioned at the top of the episode, William was a part of Fisk's crime network, ultimately dying directly by his hand after not being able to meet expectations. And so Maya was approximately 9 years old when he died in the comics, and the bloody handprint, exactly like the show. And then, speaking of the show, he's portrayed by Zahn McClarnon on Echo, the series. And similarly, he is, of course, Maya's father, and he's a commander of the Tracksuit Mafia, which is interesting because, again.
Yeah, it took me a while to put two and two together, like especially at the flashbacks of the show.
Yeah.
And I was like he was doing something, he was doing like a deal, right?
Yeah.
And then I was like, what is he wearing? And I was like, and then I was like, okay.
Exactly.
I was like,
Street gang, Draculas. Yeah, they're funny. I love the tracksuits so much. They're so dumb. so yeah, they kind of like, it gave them like a goofy flair of like, we're all together, but it just makes sense. I don't know. I can't explain it. But yeah, on the show, somewhere down the line, William gets roped into the work that Wilson Fisk is doing in the underworld. And so very similarly to the comic, it kind of starts with William just wanting to be a good father to his daughter and provide for her. And the only way he can do that is with money because she is deaf. So
money.
She needs...
money,
please.
That's all they freaking care about.
Yeah. And so he figures out, like, okay, well, what can I do for easy money? Well, I can get it the bad way. And so, we see a lot of they kind of describe the scenarios that they actually show us in Hawkeye and in Echo. It doesn't help that the shows are named after them because it's almost like I'm talking about them singularly. But for instance, like the scenes where we're first introduced to Maya and her father when they're doing the shadow puppets and stuff.
Yeah.
Totally from the comics. Like that's how he taught her. He homeschooled her, so to speak, in Indian Sign Language by telling her stories through shadows. So it wasn't enough. Like, again, as a father, he wanted to really get her proper schooling. So both versions of the character are like, well, I got to deal drugs or whatever it is. And so, get a real job? No. So he goes to work for Fisk. So it is revealed, however, that William survived the snap along with Maya and other members of their family, as well as Kingpin, for the record. And he was, quote unquote, killed by Ronin in 2018, as far as the official timeline is concerned.
Yep.
So yeah, that was essentially the last time we saw it, which is kind of weird to think about. I was like, oh yeah, that's 2018. That's to think of that flashback.
The Ronin stuff.
The Ronin stuff. I was like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
My gosh.
Clint went on a tear.
Yeah, exactly. Not unlike in the comic, for the record. So that's her father, and so it's interesting because they do introduce both parents, which is sometimes rare for Marvel characters, but in the comics,
usually it's always broken, but there was like a unhealthy balance.
Exactly right.
In that mom and dad relationship.
They don't let you down in the comics because that's exactly what happened. And so while we're introduced to this lovely couple with a very unfortunate series of events in the MCU, on the comic book side, there is Ms. Lopez. She doesn't even have a name. She just is known as Ms. She's just known as Ms. Lopez in the comics. And so there it is. William Lincoln and Ms. Lopez. It's her last name in the comics. The mom's last name. So Ms. Lopez, Maya's mother, was a nightclub waitress who at one point encountered William.
Okay.
And not long after, she was pregnant.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
It'd be like that. And so she has a very incredibly limited presence in the comic books. No first name, one appearance to her credit, and one mention to her credit. They do not talk about this woman at all.
Oh my gosh.
So in the comics, despite leaving the family when Maya was a young child, she left the family, for the record. So I didn't get to this reread until I literally read like 30 comics just to put this all together. But
Jesus.
yeah, I really went for it. She essentially could not take the stress of having a child that was disabled. And she couldn't take William's aloofness on top of it. So she was like, I can't deal with it. Quite literally. And then just leaves.
Oh my gosh.
It's messed up. Yeah. So she just takes off and they never see her again.
Wow.
Yeah. So she's listed, if you were to look her up in a character registry, she's listed as alive, but no one's looking for her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's, who cares? Nobody cares.
So in the comics, her mom is still out there.
Yeah, she's somewhere. But yeah, so that's, yeah. And so that's it. That's it. She's gone. But meanwhile, on the MCU side, we're introduced to the lovely Taloa Lopez.
Yeah.
Portrayed by Katarina Homesh. I forgot her last name. Her last name is pretty awesome.
Gervogel?
Gervogel.
Is that French?
I don't know. It almost seems European in some way. Gervogel. I need to look this up. What kind of last name? German language surname.
Duh.
Yeah. Duh is Russian.
Yeah, I know.
You're so silly.
I'm cultured as hell.
Yeah, you are. You're so worldly, Jeff. So yeah, the lovely Katarina, she portrayed Maya's mother and apparent heir of the spiritual mysticism passed through the Choctaw descendants. So I also wanted to toss in honorable mentions for the said descendants who portrayed the ancestors. And so there was Julia Jones, who portrayed Chafa, the first Choctaw. Morningstar Angeline.
That's a sick ass name.
Isn't that cool? I love Native American names. Indigenous people have the best names. Morningstar Angeline, who portrayed Loak, the stickball player.
Yeah.
Which is an intense episode.
I know. I was like, wait, this game is kind of intense right now.
And it was interesting because at that screening that I went to at the Autry Museum, someone asked, like someone that is not of Indigenous people, was like, were the Choctaw really that? And it was interesting because she used the word violent, and the representative from the tribes was like, oh, it's not necessarily a violent act. It's just very intense because they're the game itself, because they're quite literally trying to defend them being there. Yeah. They don't want to be outcasted and moved away.
The stakes are pretty high. If you lose, you leave, right?
You have to leave. Yeah. You leave your home and you're outcasted essentially, and you're left to fend for yourself without the support of those tribes.
Yeah.
So it was that episode was so intense. And so Morningstar Angeline is the amazing front woman for that one. And then Danny McCallum, who portrayed Tuklo, the first female light horseman, who again is the one that was more westernized, and she braided her hair, which was only known for the male light horseman.
Yes. Yeah,
she was the first female. Yeah, very, very cool. So kudos to all those lovely women. And then, so unfortunately for Taloa, she met her fate after a car accident. Just because what did she want? She wanted hot chocolate. Maya. She's like,
Maya wanted hot chocolate. And they were out. Yeah.
And then somebody cut their brakes.
Yeah. So really somebody was looking for, or her dad probably did a bad deal and was like, all right, you don't want to give us whatever, the money.
Yeah, because even throughout the episode when it was coming together, the Taloa's parents, who were also present in that scene, like the mother is very cold to William because she's like, I told you she shouldn't marry him because of his past, or whatever, what he's involved with. And so that's unfortunately a perfect example, because it not only resulted in Taloa dying, but it also resulted in Maya's leg being amputated.
Yeah.
So that's also notably, I didn't mention this before, but she's not an amputee in the comics. She's only deaf. So Alaqua brought that to the table for Echo.
Okay.
Because she is an actual amputee. Alaqua is, but the character canonically is not.
Got it.
She is now. Because it makes sense. It totally makes sense. I think they did a great job incorporating that. And she's obviously such a badass that you're just like, damn.
Yeah.
She's really.
I agree.
Yeah. And so, as I've said for now the third time, this is the part where it gets a little interesting. So, given the weight of how much they decided to take a focus spin not only on Maya, but the heritage of the indigenous people as a whole, it should serve as no surprise that many of the characters we're introduced to in the series have no comic book counterparts whatsoever.
Wow.
So all of these people that we're about to just mention and maybe talk a little bit about, and this is what I mean by the series, none of them have comic book counterparts. So let me just riff them all off. So Henry Black Crow Lopez. So there's a vaguely similar name in the comic books, but this is William's brother. No comic book counterpart. Chula, no comic book counterpart. Scully, no comic book counterpart. But he, this is the grandpa for the record. He kind of does have some of the same wisdom that a shaman that Echo encounters does in the comics, but still no comic book counterpart. Bonnie, no comic book counterpart. Biscuits, no comic book counterpart. So there's nothing to go back. Biscuits. So yeah, so we can talk about these folks, whatever comes to mind, Jeff. But yeah, Henry Black Crow Lopez, portrayed by Chasky Spencer, Maya's uncle and brother of William, and he's the owner of Skate Life, the roller skate rink.
Rip.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Chula Baptiste, who is portrayed by Tentu Cardinal, and so that's the grandmother. Scully, who is portrayed by Graham Greene, Maya's grandfather. Bonnie, portrayed by Devery Jacobs, and Ren Zaonim Gotts as a child. She has a little more meat to her background as well. She's Maya's cousin and a member of the Tamaha Fire Department.
Yep.
Again, Bonnie is also one of the few people who survived the snap as well. And then Devery herself also voiced fan favorite newbie from What If Season 2, Kahori. So that's awesome. And then Biscuits, portrayed by, you want to talk about a cool name? Cody Lightning. His name is Cody Lightning.
Now that's a name if I've ever heard one.
Right? Cody Lightning, who plays Biscuits. Yeah.
Ka-chow.
Ka-chow. Yeah, right. Yeah, so yeah, what did you have a favorite episode?
I mean, when I see these specific characters, it's always you need to like have like a nice foundation around like your main character.
Yeah.
And I think
especially one who's like so gray.
Yeah.
She's very gray area.
Yeah, and it's like oh, okay, like yeah, she's in New York and Kingpin's her uncle. But you're like, okay, well, where is she? Like, where does she originate from? There's like, there's no way. Like,
yeah,
she's a descendant of Wilson, of Fisk and everything.
Yeah.
So to go back to her roots,
real roots too.
Her real roots too, and
yeah,
see the people that she technically grew up with.
Yeah.
Or like when she was a child.
Yeah.
And just get to know that part. So I think it's cool because then it's like that foundation is now like being like, hey, like this is like who you really are.
Yeah.
Like whatever you were in New York, like yeah, that could be you, but don't forget where you really came from. Yeah. It's one of those like, tried and true stories. It's like, yeah, like don't forget who your ancestors are.
I thought that's what I think I really did like about it, because not that it would even come close, but it wasn't performative at all.
Yeah.
It had a very strong foundation of like she was the kid that, you suspect just went away because of Fisk. She went to New York. She made a new life for herself. But really, it's so much deeper in that she was taken away, and she did grow up with that man and his environment and her dad for what it is worth, because he did die as an adult when she was an adult rather than a child in the comics. And so for her to then have to go back to kind of like almost like the scene of the crime to revisit her journey. Yeah.
And it was like her, like when she came back, it was like her like tugging at the rope of just like, it's like I still need to be who I am. But then it's also like, oh, I've lost connection with my past.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm using like She originally went to her hometown just to do a job. She's like, I'm only here for a couple days. Da 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 da.
Yeah, because she didn't even want to text Bonnie.
Yeah,
So it was so surface.
But then
for
she
her.
finds out that, oh my god, I keep forgetting his name.
Henry.
Yes, finds out Henry's involved with the fist trains and stuff.
Yes.
And you're kind of like, oh, and she's like, okay, like, don't make me do this. And then blah 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 blah. You know, bang bang bang.
Bang bang. Yeah. It's very interesting because she has this sort of like goal in mind, and then her goal is completely derailed, or not even completely derailed. There's some conveniences that come into play.
Yeah.
Like Henry being involved with a thing, and how that then spirals into, also her grandparents at some point split up. They're separated, and why is that? What happened? And then all this stuff happened while she was off in New York being a freaking tracksuit mafia. It's so interesting. And so it is very much like that coming of age story, like you just said. Like they're really refining, like, this is who you are. Like that person that you grew up to be isn't necessarily you.
Like I like those characters in Marvel movies where it's characters like Chula and Bonnie, where it's like we've all changed, but we don't forget who we are.
Yeah, that nailed it.
And it's like,
so good, Jeff.
like, come on, like,
yeah.
So I like those characters that ground the main character when they stray off too far from the path sometimes.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I just want, again, I said this in our mini Marvel, but I love Biscuits so much.
So innocent.
He's so pure.
Yeah.
And what I do like about him, because he kind of almost reminded me a little bit of Ned in a way, but he almost seemed more useful than Ned. Not to knock Ned and his dynamic with Peter, but like,
sure.
He was goofy, but he was very proactive and trying to really help her.
Yeah.
And like he had this very like Zach Galifianakis sort of humor to him too.
Like, and no question too, he would help her no matter what.
He would just help her, and like him in the car or the truck, and him just thinking like, oh, grandma's gonna kill me. Like
what am I doing here?
But he's still like rising up to like, she's showing up for her.
Yeah.
Even though she's completely bonkers, you know what I mean?
Yeah, she's using him.
Yeah. And it's so wild. And so I kind of liked, again, I love street level characters and how grounded they can be, especially like things like that. Like in any other movie, like you wouldn't get that sort of dynamic and like realism to it, let's be frank. And so I loved, like the rest of the characters, I do love like each part that they did play, because you do have like her dad who is the echo, the memory of what was, and then everybody else who follows to remind her like, oh, the past wasn't all that bad. You lost your mom, you lost your dad, but also you had us and you had your family, and you grew up with essentially your sister, because that's what she does call her at the time. She's like, you're my sister. And it's great because again, it brings it all back to the heritage aspect. And so I feel like versus the comic where it was just like, here's her dad, her mom left, but now she's an Echo.
Yeah.
You don't get any of that backstory at all that they filled in. And again, the ancestry. So it's very important, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did great. Did you have a favorite episode? Was there even, did you just love the entire thing?
I mean, as a whole, because how the story progresses from the beginning to the end. But I think that comes to mind where when they're stuck in the skating rink. Yeah. Yeah, I enjoyed that, and I thought they showed a lot of violence in it too, which I was like, oh, they're showing it. I was like when the guy got shot and everything, I was like, oh. Yeah, they really went for it. And again, I'm glad, because I mean, everybody was worried about what the nature of the show was going to be, and when they said mature, they delivered. Yeah. So I enjoyed that episode a lot. Yeah. Obviously, and that situation kind of sucked. Let's be honest. Oh yeah. I was like, oh no, how are they going to get out of this? Yeah, this is horrible. Yeah. Or even when she encountered Daredevil too, that was a fun fight. Oh my god. I was like, wow, this is This is a Daredevil.
You should have heard that crowd.
Oh, really?
The screening. I may have been the loudest person because it was like a 400 seater, so it was pretty small.
Yeah, I didn't know when to expect Daredevil.
No, same. I had no idea.
And so when he popped up, I was like, oh shoot.
Yeah, but I speaking of him, I loved that introduction. I just loved how also they presented him. Right, because that's present time, right? That's supposed to be 2024.
Yeah,
right?
it's like during
So you have to think, if I forgot where it falls, I think Echo is right before She-Hulk. So you have to think that technically red suit Daredevil comes before red and yellow suit Daredevil, apparently. But he was not snapped. So, right? He wasn't snapped. So he's kind of had all this time to figure himself out as Daredevil. So he comes in with this sort of like very nuanced, like he knows what he's capable of. The tone of his voice was like intense. It was actually intense. Because like, what does he say to her? He's like, I've been watching these guys.
Yeah.
And then you came along and you messed it all up.
Yeah,
or
like I was like the Daredevil quips.
I was like, oh my God, Matt Murdock, you're back.
Yeah.
I loved him so much. And their fight also is incredible. And like I mentioned in our mini Marvel, Alaqua mentioned, she's like, that was my favorite scene to shoot. And the entire series was my fight against Daredevil. And yeah, it was just so good. And they also
so much fun.
It was so much fun. Yeah, I don't want to say that was my favorite part. It was definitely a favorable part because I am a huge Daredevil
huge
fan.
Favorite moment for sure.
Yeah, but I too just love the way that it intensified with each episode and how they really delivered. And it made me believe in a 5-episode format series. Honestly, because I know we talked about this off mic a few times before the series dropped. I was like, oh man, it's only 5. But it actually fit the bill. I think it was perfectly structured in that way, and it didn't need 3 more episodes or felt like it lacked in any way.
Yeah.
You just kind of want to see more, but it didn't lack anything.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty solid. So you ready for your one and only pop quiz of the episode?
Oh no.
This is going to be an interesting one because I am curious if you retain this. So, what was the name of Biscuits' pet dog?
No.
He says it a few times.
I know. No. See, it's these little like nuanced questions that get me every time. And it's like, gosh. He's like, come here. Like, hey.
Yeah.
Oh, God. I can't even think of a name.
Yeah.
Snuggles.
Snuggles?
I don't know.
So.
No.
He says, come on, Billy Jack.
Billy Jack.
Billy Jack.
Get in the truck. We're going for
Yeah. So I thought this was what resonated with me at the screening because, I wouldn't have caught this at all. But being in a crowd that was predominantly Native American, immediately heard reactions when he said, "Come here, Billy Jack," and people were like, "Oh," and I was like, what did I miss?
Yeah.
I was like, I felt like Captain America. I was like, what reference is that? I didn't get that reference. And so I looked it up, and of course, it's likely a callback to the 1971 film based on a mixed race Navajo by the same name, Billy Jack. And so the synopsis reads, ex-Green Beret Hapkido expert saves wild horses from being slaughtered for dog food and helps protect a desert freedom school for runaway. I don't know what I wrote that, but yeah. So it's a 1970s movie called Billy Jack, and so it was a tremendous like success as far as I don't know if success is the correct word, but it was a prominent part of Native Americans in pop culture history. So yeah, so the older folks were like, "Oh, Billy Jack," and I was like, "Oh, that's really cute." So I immediately was like, "I gotta look this up once I'm out of here." And so yeah, so that was his dog. Wow, wow. It's okay, Jeff.
I'm getting worse and worse.
You're starting the year strong. It's okay. Snuggles is here to save
cute.
the day.
It's a cute name, though.
Yeah, it is cute. So, notable adversaries. Maya has a pretty decent list of enemies in the comics, ranging from the Hulk, Claw, Madam Mask,
The Claw,
Moonstone, Viper, Silver Samurai, Ultron, even Titania.
Oh my gosh.
Can you see her? Can you imagine her fighting Titania?
It's so funny.
So that said, we're just going to concentrate on who we've seen her go head to head in the MCU so far. And so, of course, at the top of that list, the one and only Wilson Fisk. Maya. So funny. It's like
Come
ASMR.
home with me.
I love that.
And I promise to give you everything you want.
I always think I know what Vincent D'Onofrio sounds like because of Wilson Fisk.
And it's never
and
that.
And then you hear his real voice and you're like, oh, he doesn't sound like that at all. At all. Not even tonally. And have you seen the Magnificent Seven remake with him and Chris Pratt?
No, I didn't.
It's actually, I loved it. I don't think it did as well as they hoped it would.
Yeah.
But his character was my favorite character in that film. And he's so good. Like at that point, I think only season 1 of Daredevil had come out. Or maybe not even that. Like I think I saw, because they were both in Jurassic World as well. And so it was right on the piggyback of that or right before it. And I remember being like, this dude is so versatile. Like his voice, like he's a true character actor where he can really change his voice. And Wilson Fisk, I always forget how phenomenal it is because it doesn't sound like him.
Yeah. You know what's messed up on my end? I have Wilson Fisk, his version of Wilson Fisk so ingrained in my head.
Yeah.
Like the 3 seasons,
Yeah.
this show.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what else has he been in?
Oh, you've probably seen him in
That's
tons
why
of
that's
stuff.
why I'm like, wait, I definitely I know his movie. I'm so ingrained in a bald-headed, big masked dude that I can't think of any other role that he's big role that he's been in.
Okay, let's look very quickly. Let's look at what Vincent D'Onofrio has been in, and you're gonna be like, what the? Full Metal Jacket, Law and Order, Echo, Daredevil, Men in Black,
Okay.
The Magnificent Seven, The Cell, that's with J-Lo,
Okay.
Jurassic World, Hawkeye, Mystic Pizza, Lift, Dumb Money with Sebastian Stan,
Okay.
Escape Plan,
Yeah, definitely Full Metal Jacket then. That's probably the one. Yeah.
Death Wish with Bruce Willis,
Possibly.
Chips, the modern remake.
Oh yeah, with Dax Shepard.
Yeah. Let's see what else. The Irishman, Pele.
Okay.
I don't know if you saw Pele. The Unforgivable.
Yeah.
With
So
Sandra Bullock.
he's definitely been in rom-coms probably.
Yeah.
I think a couple where I'm like, that's Vincent D'Onofrio.
I know. MIB too. So he was in both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's all over the board.
Yeah.
You know,
But
he's so wild.
It's like a Chris Evans thing. You're like, what else do I know Chris Evans at? But because like you know him as like he is Captain America, Steve Rogers. But then you're like, I always tell people, I'm like, have you guys seen Not Another Teen Movie?
Oh my god,
They're like,
it's so
no.
good.
They're like, no, I haven't. And I'm
love
like,
that movie.
watch it.
Yeah.
And then be like, is that Chris Evans? And you'll be like, yes, it is Chris Evans. That man has a banana with whipped cream sticking out of his butt.
Yeah.
In that movie.
And maraschino cherries on his boobies.
Yes. That's Captain America.
It's so funny.
That's why I'm like,
yeah, dude.
Holy.
Versatility. So that is very true when it comes to Vincent D'Onofrio. And I promise you've seen him in more stuff and you're just like, what? So in the comics, Wilson Fisk. So again, he is also very deeply rooted in Maya's life. And he evidently met Maya's father when he was 19. It is very interesting when you read the story from Wilson's perspective because he recollects it differently as anybody would, right? You hear that's the phrase that like there are 3 sides of a story, yours, mine, and the truth, right?
Yeah.
So from Wilson's perspective, he of course kind of like trudges through his really broken childhood and how that affected him and how he deserved more and took all of New York, all that kind of shit. And so it's what I thought was really interesting is that, are you familiar with Ben? Michael Jackson's Ben? Ben, the two of us need look no more.
A song?
It's a song.
No, not Ben.
Okay, so
Billie Jean, but no.
So Ben was a song from the Jackson 5.
Oh, okay.
And it was about a rat. And it was a pet rat that I guess, I don't know the full scope of the backstory, but I believe it was also based on Michael Jackson's like childhood friend. And so ironically enough, I don't know if this was intentional or not, Wilson Fisk growing up, you know, they lived in a dilapidated apartment. They were poor, but Wilson was always hungry, and so he ate and ate and ate, and he was a chubby little boy, and his dad was awful, and his mom got beat all the time, and so he had no friends.
Yeah.
And so he essentially befriends a pet mouse or rat in his apartment, and he's aptly named Ben, like the Michael Jackson song. So he goes through this particular issue, recollecting how he had grown up quite literally from childhood until he was 19, and William Lincoln was his first human friend. Super dark, super sad.
Whoa.
Yeah, and so when the mouse or the rat, I don't remember what it is, when it died, he once again felt like he had nobody. And so it didn't help his mental state. And so, yeah, it isn't until he's 19 that he realizes, oh, I can have human relationships. And he finds that in William, until William, of course, spirals out of control and, you know, gets in over his head. So that's more or less why he really did take on adopting Maya under his wing, because he owed William that much. But he very famously says in the comic that he enjoyed having William around because he, quote unquote, makes me look sane. So if that gives if that gives you any indication of what Crazy Horse was like in the comics, that's the line right there, is that he made Fisk feel like he looked sane. So that's a very different dynamic when it comes to the show's version of William Lopez. But of course, Wilson Fisk, portrayed by the amazing and great and incredible Vincent D'Onofrio. And of course, you know, when it comes to Maya, she was co-raised by Kingpin, refers to him as uncle. Again, you get the sense that Maya had taken situations into her own hands under Fisk, so she kind of just grows into this position. Yeah. And she follows in her father's footsteps with the tracksuit mafia, bro. And one of the most messed up things, however, like this is the interesting thing, and this is also another thing I wanted to talk about when it came to the Echo series, is that despite everything he says and how much he cares about Maya, he can't even fully commit to learning ASL. Yeah. So crazy. Yeah. And I love that there's an intentionality with that sort of power move. But again, he did equip her with some technology that she inevitably
but that thing probably cost like hella money.
I know, you know, that cost like $5 million.
Cost so much money. I mean, like sure, the thought's there, but it's like, you probably could have spent like $1,000 on just ASL classes. Exactly. And it would have been much easier.
Yeah, exactly. And he couldn't even do that.
And I said it in our mini Marvel, our last mini Marvel, like ASL would be a sick language to learn.
I know. Let's do it. Let's do it. I mean, there's another reason why you should read Hawkeye, the Matt Fraction one. Yeah. They put a tremendous amount of ASL in it. That's sick. Because he is deaf. Right? Yeah, yeah. And I think, you know, to kind of bind these two stories together, Hawkeye and Echo, it's interesting because at the time of the publication of these stories of Maya's, again, they didn't really adopt the ASL aspect. Yeah. I feel like that was something more prominent in and because of the Matt Fraction series. Because if you do jump ahead and you do read the more modern comics featuring Maya, now they're actually doing like, they do the little lines to swoop that she's signing something.
Okay.
If she's talking to another deaf character. So I'm like, oh, see, now they're putting in the effort. Speaking of effort, right? And so, yeah, you know, with Fisk, the weirdness of their relationship in that he also gifted her the hammer he killed his father with. Like, it's so bizarre. Like we mentioned above earlier, you know, he's essentially taken down by Maya and her ancestral power, leaving him, in Vincent's own words, an enlightened man. So to what extent, we do not know. However, there is a post-credits scene in Echo episode 5 at the end of the series, and Wilson Fisk is considering running for mayor, like in the comics. So
they really
that's big. It's a big deal.
They're really adapting to the comics, man.
It's a big deal, and it touches so many characters. Just him being in that position,
like
it's unreal.
I just think of the first Spider-Man game, Insomniac game, and I'm like, man.
Yep, exactly right. But then imagine the scope of that even broader, because again, it touches everybody in that city. So whoever's moving into Stark Tower, them. The street level kids.
What if it's Fisk that bought Stark Tower?
That's the thing. That was one of the theories, is that it could be the Fantastic Four and the Baxter Building, or it could be Fisk, and it could be his domineering like empire growing.
His climb to be mayor.
Yeah, exactly. So,
hey, maybe we'll finally get a Spidey Daredevil team up.
Oh my god! Please
against Fisk.
Please.
It's not gonna happen.
Team Red. Yeah, I know. We would sooner get Daredevil.
Sony would rather create
Madame Web. Freaking A. Can't win. My once like whole thing of like, I'll never see the X-Men in spandex is now like, I'll never see Spider-Man with anybody else. He's just gonna be in his own movie forever because of Sony. No, it has to happen. It has to happen.
Needs to happen.
It has to happen.
Like Tom Holland and Charlie Cox need to be in the same room.
In costume.
Yes. Masks off.
I mean, per the contract, they got to show that moneymaker. Yeah. So Fisk becoming mayor will definitely, that's going to shake some stuff up.
Yeah.
It's going to shake a lot of trees. It's going to touch a lot of different heroes and their day-to-days. And
Daredevil's going to be insane.
I can't wait. And so as for the rest of Maya's notable adversaries, we've coasted through a variety of blurred lines. And speaking of gray area, first with the family, then the adversaries, and now, well, the love interests have also been
minimal
adversaries.
Oh.
So
love that.
This section is going to be fun for you. This is interesting. So first on the love interests list, I didn't really want to include him in here under this category rather than the adversaries category. However, Clint Barton.
All right, immediately weird.
Hawkeye. Yeah.
Immediately weird.
Again, comic book Clint is so different. But so now, while Maya debuted in 1999, she took on a different moniker in the New Avengers, particularly, issue number 11, cover dated November 2005. So she's been in the comic books at that point 6 years. This version of Maya, she was Echo from the get-go, right?
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Your face. Nice. I didn't even plan that one. Hey. Wow, the immediate impression on your face. You're
Let them know, Dai.
Echo from the get-go.
Just rolls off the tongue.
I know, it's so good. Okay, so she had always been Echo since her introduction, but in 2005, a new version of the character, so to speak, was created by the ever popular Brian Michael Bendis. This is the creator of Miles Morales, for the record, and artist David Finch. Maya took on the moniker.
The director? Oh, David Fincher. Sorry.
Yeah, I know.
I was like, wait.
Yeah, they're two different people. Yeah. Very close names. Like, if I always have to do double take, I'm like, David Finch? I'm like, wait, David Fincher.
Yeah.
So David Finch. Brian and David created a new version, or introduced a new version of Maya, in which she took on the moniker, first person to take it on, for the record, of Ronin.
Interesting.
And so she predated Clint Barton. She was the person that had the moniker before Clint did, and before Clint gave Hawkeye to Kate Bishop.
Whoa.
Yeah. So that is the real reason why bringing her into Hawkeye the series made perfect sense. Because they were like, wait. Why is Echo here? And if you're a comic book person, you're like, Ronin. And it made sense. So in the comics, they purposefully made the Ronin suit to look the way it does. It does look very masculine. Okay. And so Maya took on this persona, and she did what Ronin does and what we know Ronin to do, and that's assassinate people, kill people, whatever.
As one does.
But as a completely anonymous individual, to the point where you could not tell what gender they were. And it was on purpose. It was because they wanted the anonymity of it. And so she was able to get away with virtually anything she wanted. And so just for some background, Ronin, the word Ronin itself is Japanese for a vagrant samurai, or a samurai that has no master. So this is particularly true for Maya. Yeah. Because this is like when she's, finding her individuality apart from being, Fisk's pawn. And so the identity was created to conceal the person that was doing that, so they could do all these deeds. And so Brian Michael Bendis himself cited that while the intention was to originally have Ronin be Matt Murdock, for the record, yeah, it was supposed to be Daredevil. It ultimately was written for Maya, leading into the new Avengers storyline involving Elektra. So this introduced Echo into this whole world of the Hand and the samurai, the ninjas and stuff. And
okay.
So it kind of took course and steered her into that way. But it was an interesting era in her life. And so because of her involvement with the new Avengers, this then put her directly aligned with Clint Barton. Mm-hmm. Very short-lived romance. I don't even know if you want to call it a romance, but that's how that happened.
Hell no.
Yeah, whereas in the MCU, of course, Clint Barton, Hawkeye, portrayed by Jeremy Renner. And I just put on my notes, that didn't happen. So so that's that. And we all know their dynamic and how he has a recurring cameo of sorts in the first episode of Echo, just as a recap of what happened between them. But yeah, there's nothing more on that level. I don't think we'll see them cross paths again. If we do, it's just for him to help her, I think, or vice versa. Yeah. They'll probably in good terms.
Like Hawkeye is just chilling now.
Yeah, he's chilling like a villain.
With Mockingbird,
Yay! Bobby! And then next on the list, not really a surprise, Matt Murdock, Daredevil. So this one's interesting because, of course, it does involve Kingpin again. So in the comics, during the course of Maya's introduction, she almost immediately encounters Matt Murdock as a favor to Fisk. So he plants her. He's like, I need you to do me a favor. And then ensures that they meet one another. She quite literally goes to Nelson Murdock and is like, I need help. And so they unexpectedly have phenomenal chemistry. And so, and I think this is also a surprise to Maya as well, but Matt falls for her. And it isn't until later that Maya discovers that Matt is also Daredevil. So in this story arc, he knows because she's not wearing a costume or anything. And so she's going after Daredevil, and he's like, oh my God, it's Maya. But then he's like,
that's funny.
And then he's like Matt Murdock, and like she comes around and he's like, you know, he's like he's like,
yeah.
He's really tense, and she has no idea why. And she's just like, hi, Matt. And he's like, she's gonna kill me.
That's
funny. And
funny.
so it really plays into like their dynamic a bit. But yeah, she eventually finds out because they're fighting, and he bleeds in a specific area that he was as Matt. It's like the Spider-Man Thanksgiving scene.
Yes.
When Norman catches like Peter's arm.
Yeah.
And he's like,
yeah, man.
Yeah, same thing.
The bike messenger.
Yeah, that's right. And so it's the same thing. And Maya then realizes, oh my God, you're Matt. And so, needless to say, does not work out for them. But they do have recurrences where they're in the same place, and there's that chemistry again. And when after that initial arc that she's introduced in, she goes away for quite a long time. It's like maybe 4 years or something. I don't know. She's jumping around into other books, and then they come together again. You know, of course, it's an epic rooftop at nighttime, and she's like, the chemistry is pulling them together, and she wants to kiss him, but he's like, I'm with someone else now.
Oof.
And she's like, oh. And then, of course, she disappears into the night. You know, it's like, it's very dramatic. And then, of course, on the MCU side of the spectrum, our Matt Murdock Daredevil, portrayed by King Charlie Cox.
Yeah.
Oh, Charlie. Also, does not happen. So it is, however, not completely out of the question. So there's still room for this to actually happen in the MCU in some manner. I don't think it needs to. I don't need to see it.
It's not necessary.
No, I don't think it's necessary at all. She is actually one of the characters that I actually don't think she needs a romantic partner at all.
Strictly business.
Yeah, I like the family stuff. The family stuff's great. And so I doubt it, but we'll see how their dynamic continues with Daredevil Born Again.
I know. I wonder if any other MCU characters will make any appearance that's not the Daredevil characters, you know?
Yeah. Very curious. Let's
I'm
go.
Very curious. Like, I'm not surprised if Maya makes an appearance.
Yeah. I would almost expect her to have a cameo of some sort, not unlike Daredevil.
And Tom Holland. I'm just kidding.
Please. Just gonna break my heart. All those episodes are gonna roll out, and I'm like, Spider-Man? No Spider-Man. Spider-Man?
What if it just Ryan Reynolds pops out?
Oh, it's gonna happen.
Just
They're
like
gonna
randomly.
do it just to be,
Just like for no reason at all. Like, it doesn't
love it.
need to have any reason. It's just like, yeah, well.
Oh, I could see Deadpool rolling on screen in the background and being like, Team Red? Oh, my mistake. And then that's it. And then he just rolls off screen.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I can see it. It's not gonna happen. It's fine. I'll be dead. It's fine. It'll never happen in my lifetime. And last on the love interests list, this is a big one, man. This is a big one. Mark Spector, Moon Knight.
It's a very interesting.
And so it sounds weird. I know it sounds weird, but if you read the comics and you kind of get the sense of it on paper, quite literally, it actually works. It weirdly works. And so the two encountered one another during an era, and we talked about this very briefly in our Moon Knight episode. This is the era where Moon Knight had 3 different alters in his head, and they were Spider-Man, Captain America, and Wolverine.
So funny.
So instead of the Jake and Steven running around along with Khonshu, it was Cap, Spidey, and Wolverine.
That's funny. What a concept.
It was so bizarre. And he could then render their powers and all that stuff. They were talking to him constantly. And so in this series, Maya was working as an undercover stripper.
Wow. Okay.
And Mark strolled in to, he was on his own mission of, doing his own detective work, if you will.
Yeah.
And so she was undercover, and she actually broke character to save Mark because he got into a pinch and because he's crazy, and Spider-Man took over at one part, and Mark does.
Yeah.
And so Maya sort of saved him. The two got closer over this like issue arc that was like almost 6 issues long or so. I want to say 5 or 6. And Mark then enlists her. He convinces her to help him find the Kingpin of Los Angeles. So it takes place here, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah, but it's very strange. It's a little different, but it is a Moon Knight book, so it's got this interesting quirkiness to it, and especially with again Spider-Man, Cap, and Wolverine jumping around in his brain. And along in their shared adventure, the two had chemistry, but Maya dies at the near tail end of the story arc.
Oh my gosh.
Spoiler alert, she came back.
Oh.
But that's
they always do. Why did I even think about
I know, right? She's resurrected later on down the line. Which, by the way, I did not write it in these notes, but she at one point did possess the Phoenix Force.
What the frick?
And she's known as Thunderbird.
Nice,
right? Yeah, it's pretty sick. So she does come back. It's just comic book being comic book. But yeah. Not much after that. The series itself is only I think 12 issues total. She's in half of it. It's good. It's a good quick read if you want, and it's well done. The team's great, so it's worth a shot. And of course, Mark Spector, Moon Knight, portrayed by the one and only Oscar Isaac, first and last seen in 2022's Moon Knight. So it's been 2 years since we've seen Moon Knight, which is really sad.
That's crazy.
And again, there's no overlap at the moment, but apparently Echo was pitched to make her debut in Moon Knight series as Mark's main love interest, not what's her name?
Oh
my gosh, why am I forgetting?
Oh my gosh, the girl with the wings.
Scarlet Scarab.
Yeah, Scarlet Scarab.
Yeah. So instead of her, they were pitching Maya be the forefront.
Oh wow, that would be interesting.
That would have been really interesting. And instead, they were like, hey, we have a Hawkeye series coming, and they were like, oh, that actually works better. And so
yeah, I think it would.
History was made. So yeah, that brings us to Almost Was. And so while no other specific names have been mentioned regarding the final prospects of the role of Echo, it's been suggested that Alaqua had it from the get-go. Echo from the get-go.
Yeah.
Again.
I'm pretty sure, yeah. I saw that video where they're on that Zoom call and they gave it and they announced that she got
cute.
it. Yeah.
Super cute. Yeah, they just posted it on the Echo social. Or Marvel Studio social. Yeah, so she had it, despite the numerous rounds of testing. So yeah, I think she did pretty great. And again, her first acting gig is Hawkeye. So
dude, her and Iman, like
killing it,
man.
And she's an amazing stunt woman. So it's just again kudos to Alaqua, amazing. And so, future of the character in the MCU, what do you think?
Well, she's a very ground level character in my opinion, but she has these otherworldly powers now.
I keep calling them like spiritual, mystical powers. So
I'm very curious to see how that could play into a fight or a battle, I guess. But if she stays like in grounded stories, like the rest of her tenure, I'm okay with that. Like if it's 100%. If it's only like in New York type of thing, like I'm okay with that.
Yep, hard time. Yeah.
But I do wonder now, like where she goes from here, since she has this newfound discovery about herself. Well, also she didn't go back to New York with Fisk.
Yeah.
So now I wonder, okay, where do you go from here? Like now you have these special powers, but you're also not a part of that Fisk world.
Network. Yeah.
Unless she has that revenge type thing going on,
which is possible.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but
like maybe not. She doesn't want to like fight Fisk. Now she just wants to help him. And maybe that's her choice to go to New York.
Maybe.
And then when she gets to New York, she finds out like he's the mayor.
Yeah.
And then while she's trying to like get to Fisk, Daredevil's also on the same path.
Yes.
And then they find out that like, oh, we're not enemies anymore.
Yeah.
Boom, bada bing, shabang. Born again, you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, no, I fully agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's great. Yeah, time will tell. We have a year to go before
comes out next year, right?
Yeah, 2025.
I hope it'll at least be more than 10 episodes.
Yeah, because they did mention recently,
because of the strikes and everything.
It will no longer. Well, 18 is no longer confirmed. Or
like, it's
something.
not like, oh, they're not sure. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not sure, but let's see.
Yeah.
That's great. So, suggested reading. A couple of these came from Patreon listener supporter Andrew, because of course, biggest Daredevil fan I know personally. So 1999's Daredevil Volume 2, particularly issues 9 through 16, with writer, cover artist, and colorist David Mack at the helm, along with artist Joe Quesada and inker Jimmy Palmiotti. So the interesting thing, very quick fun fact, David Mack usually does art, Joe Quesada usually does writing. Mm-hmm. They flip-flop. Joe Quesada is actually quite a renowned artist, but again, he's a very busy man, so it was earlier in the game, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But I will also additionally advocate for David Mack's Daredevil issues in 2003. This is 4 years after, which are issues 51 through 55. And I think that if anybody wants to get a real sense of how Echo's origin went in the comics, those are the issues to read. And again, like David, it's interesting because when Joe Quesada drew it, it had a different vibe, but when David Mack took it on, felt very different, very layered, very, very, I guess the word of the episode is nuanced. And so very beautiful and visual, especially for a character like Maya, who is very much artistic. And number 3, we have 2011's Moon Knight from the creative team of Powerhouse Goats, Brian Michael Bendis and Alex Maleev. And this is, again, the interesting trio of alters and their little romantic stint. Then there's 2023's Marvel Voices Infinity Comics. So there's about, I think, 5 or 6 of them. It's a very quick, it's a vertical swipe, fully vertical comic book. You can read it in probably 10-15 minutes flat. But it does kind of touch upon big moments in Echo's life, as well as her origin and a very modern day story at the very end. And then finally, 2023's Daredevil and Echo from creative team Taboo, B. Earl and Phil Noto. That is, I think, that is the most recent comic she is in. And it is the two of them teaming up together to kind of get to the there's this thing called, I think it's the Demi-Goblin or Dema-Goblin or something. It's like
Demogorgon?
I know. I was like, it's not Demogorgon. But it is like a goblin-like creature. And it's a very interesting storyline. It's a fast read too. It's like 5 issues long or so, and it's great. So give it a whirl. That said, that's the end of the show.
Woo!
Thanks for listening, guys. So next episode, February is coming up, and I generally get to pick whoever I want to cover because my birthday is next month. So because those are the rules, please join us as we take a cosmic rewind back to our Guardians of the Galaxy because we have not covered them all yet. And join us as we finally talk all things Drax the Destroyer.
Drax!
You like that rocket? And of course, Madame Web comes out, I think it was February 7th, 14th?
Valentine's Day.
It's Valentine's Day-ish.
Weekend.
So we're gonna let y'all go watch that first before covering Madame Web later in the month.
Damn it.
Can't wait. I can't wait. Also, related but not related, Sydney Sweeney is about to be on Hot Ones. So
I know.
Get you some of that.
I saw.
We're prepping for all the Spider-Verse stuff. It's great.
Gosh.
And finally, thank you to all our Patreon supporters and a special We Are Groot salute in particular to Robin, Ariel, Ashley, Ed, Sherry, Tyler, Melanie, Andrew, Eve, Chris, Andrea, Jenny, Nats, Katie, Joe, Liz, Laura, and Edgar.
Woo!
Follow us on social, STRKCNTRST. And if you like what you hear, please review, rate, and subscribe.
Do it.
Do it.
Once again, thanks for listening. We will catch y'all in the next one.
See you later.
Bye.
I wanted you. No. But if you, or anyone, comes after me and my family, it'll be the last thing that you do. You have my word. You and I were the same. But weapons, when you're filled with rage, makes you blind.